Many of your organizations have warned about the looming electric reliability crisis that is driven by misguided state policies, the EPA regulations, and utility decisions to retire our most reliable, readily dispatchable power generation. Heard that as a theme today. The current pace and scale of power plant closures is threatening your ability to keep the lights on. Mr. Bressler, PJM is expected to lose 40 gigawatts of reliable generation, primarily due to coal and gas retirement by 2030. That's almost 1/4 of your total capacity. What concerns you the most about losing so much coal and natural gas generation so quickly?
Well, I think there's two aspects to that, Mr. Chairman. The first is overall resource adequacy, making sure that resources come on the system in sufficient quantities with sufficient reliability value to be able to replace those that are retiring. And then secondly, in the longer term, maintaining the grid services, the flexibility, the ramping capability, those types of operational services are required to operate a reliable grid. So it concerns us from both those aspects.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mr. Van Willy, ISO New England wrote to President Biden last year that during the coldest days of the year, New England does not have sufficient pipeline infrastructure to meet the region's demand for natural gas. You need natural gas for power plants, correct?
That's correct, and because of those constraints, we're very dependent on imported natural gas from other parts of the world. So it's a workaround around the pipeline constraints, and we also become very dependent on burning oil during the winter time. So I think it's unlikely that we will see pipelines built in New England. The last time the governors were behind this was in 2014. And the focus now, the policy focus is basically to wean ourselves off natural gas, but that's going to be a long journey.
Yeah, natural gas coming in by LNG ships, sometimes from our adversaries. We all know the stories of Russian LNG ships in the Boston Harbor. Natural gas can be delivered by a pipeline or a tanker. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. One of the big discussions last year was whether there would be sufficient LNG making it to the region, and there were a lot of letters written looking at whether it would be possible to get domestic natural gas via ship to New England, but that's not possible because of the constraints of the Jones Act.
And the need for American flag-owned crude ships that are Jones Act compliant. And there's another industry that needs to be stood up in this country. Are you frustrated that state lawmakers have ignored your warnings about the lack of natural gas supply and the impact it's having on reliability in your electric grid?
I accept their policy imperative. So, if you speak to at least 5 of the 6 states in New England, the policy imperative is to move towards clean energy as swiftly as possible. So the question then becomes, how do you work with what you've got and be realistic about what you've got and make sure that you retain what you have and don't let it retire before you get the new resources online.
And always pushing for more. New England is not alone. South Carolina had resource adequacy issues with the need for natural gas and natural gas pipeline capacities and point of criticality for our state. That's why Mountain Valley Pipeline was so important to the southeast to free up capacity. Mr. Van Willy and Mr. Dewey, I'm going to ask you both this, and I guess Mr. Bressler too. Some are under the illusion that offshore wind is a silver bullet to your reliability problems. However, we're learning that projects off the coast of New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts are all facing significant cost overruns and questions about reliability. In July, Governor Murphy signed a law to require New Jersey ratepayers to bail out a Danish wind developer. Developers in Massachusetts and New York are also asking for bailouts to continue their projects. Are you following these trends affecting offshore wind projects with the cost overruns and construction delays? And I'll start with Mr. Willie.
Yeah, we are. That's one of the things that worries us in the longer run. So if that resource comes online on schedule, we'll be much better off, obviously, than if it's late and we're seeing significant delays. The first couple of projects should come on time, but the remaining projects are the ones that are in trouble. And I was chatting to Rich Dewey about this before. It's really a global problem at the moment. We're seeing the same issue in Europe.
Mr. Dewey, answer that too.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yes, we are tracking that exceedingly closely. Offshore wind presents tremendous promise in the fact that it performs better than onshore wind and interjects directly into the load centers into New York City. But the timing of these projects needs to be carefully coordinated with any planned exit of resources, and we have been pretty vocal about the need to retain those fossil-based resources until and unless we can verify that those
and cost overruns and bailouts too, Mr. Bressler.
Sure. While actively planning for the integration of those resources, I'll just say that contributes to our concern about resources coming online in a timely manner to replace what we anticipate to retire.
Yeah, thank you for that. Let me just say for the record, the Republicans are all the above. We like wind and solar. We like renewables. We also know what works. We know what's needed to keep the grid reliable and affordable for our constituents and the citizens of the country.